What a privilege and joy to visit Israel, the land of the Bible. We started our visit within the ancient city of Jerusalem, near the Jaffa Gate, at the Tower of David. From these ramparts, we were provided with magnificent views. Throughout the fortress are visual displays of Israel's history, from the time of King David and the First Temple, through the Babylonian captivity, to the glories of the Second Temple, followed by the destruction of the Romans, the back and forth conquest of the Muslims and Crusaders, and so it goes. There just happened to be a medieval Renaissance festival going on throughout the city.
The next day, beginning at the Jaffa Gate, we took a walk on the city wall. This is the famous Damascus Gate in the Muslim quarter of the city. Certainly a very active and busy place. Outside the Damascus Gate is Zedekiah's Cave, or Solomon's Quarry, which reaches nearly a quarter of a mile under the old city. It is named after Zedekiah because he may have fled through here during the Babylonian onslaught. They actually put on parties down here, which we missed by one day.
On the other side of the city, at the Lion's Gate, also called St. Stephen's Gate, is the Mount of Olives. Our first stop on the Mount of Olives is the beautiful little church of Bethphage, commemorating where the Lord acquired a little donkey to ride into Jerusalem. Nearby is the Dome of the Ascension, marking the place where the Lord touched off from the earth on his way back to heaven.
The Pater Noster Church reminds, in over 100 languages, that the Lord taught his disciples and everyone else the correct way to pray to God.
From the top of the Mount of Olives, there is a breathtaking view of the Temple Mount and Old Jerusalem. It is the perfect spot for teaching. Next, we ventured into the tomb of the prophets, supposedly where Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi were buried. Of course, they wouldn't be here, because they would have been resurrected at the death of the Lord. Still, there are many graves covering the western slopes of the Mount of Olives.
A little further down is the Church of Dominus Flevit, or where the Lord looked out over Jerusalem and began to weep. because most people would reject him as Messiah. As a result, Jerusalem would be utterly destroyed and controlled by foreigners. He left hope that they would one day accept him. The spectacular Church of Mary Magdalene reiterates the Lord's teaching to keep watching and praying, lest we also be tempted to reject the Lord.
Low on the slope is the Garden of Gethsemane, where the Lord prayed desperately for himself concerning the sacrificial work that only he could perform. They still gather olives from these ancient trees. The Church of All Nations, or the Church of Agony, is built over the stone where the Lord laid upon to pray. It is a very provocative place. From here, in those days, the Lord looked up to an open eastern gate, which is now blocked and awaiting his future return.
Between these two significant locations, the Mount of Olives and the Temple Mount, is the deep Kidron Valley, which is marked by several notable tombs. This valley is symbolic of the day of the Lord, when he will come to judge the living and the dead. Continuing along the city wall, we come to the Church of the Upper Room, which commemorates the last Passover supper of the Lord. And nearby is where many Israelis come to visit, celebrate, and pray at the tomb of King David, the ancestor of the Lord.
These are ancient steps which the Lord may have walked on. The steps are on the grounds of the Church of Peter Gallicantu, or where the rooster crowed. The plaques, paintings, and statues tell of that fateful story. Muslim East Jerusalem looks upon this significant church every morning.
Now, within the city walls is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Originally, this place where the Lord was crucified was a rocky area outside the walls. Nearly all of the rock was removed by the Romans to desecrate the place. But people remembered the location and marked it with a shrine and eventually built the Holy Sepulchre Church over it all. Believers come from all over the world to worship here and relive their Lord's sacrifice for sins and his resurrection, proving heaven's total acceptance. Markings on the walls show that many in ancient times and many in more recent times have visited the Holy Sepulchre.
Today, outside the walls, beside the bus station, is another rocky hill and a garden tomb that, at least, has the look and feel of what happened 2,000 years ago. Here also, people come from all over the world to celebrate the Lord's unique work. However, we don't look here for the Lord, but here as He promised. That spiritual Feast of Tabernacles, Where the world comes to Jerusalem to remember God's provision is happening now.
When the Jewish quarter was being rebuilt, ancient houses and villas were discovered, which were destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. Though sad, it was an event that the Lord said would happen, because the people had ignored God's previous visitation to the city and temple. The opulence and destruction of that time are evident for all to see.
The Romans rebuilt over the ruins a pagan city called Aelia Capitolina, now partially uncovered and used as a shopping mall. The Hurva synagogue was recently rebuilt from the ruins. Inside the synagogue is a painting about the exiles hanging their harps on the trees by the river of Babylon. But now they are back in their homeland. Many bar mitzvah parades pass by on the way to the Western Wall.
The Western Wall, or Wailing Wall, is revered as the closest place where Orthodox Jews can come to the location of the Holy of Holies of the ancient temple. Some come for the joy of it all and to pray to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Believers thank the Lord for His blessings and to pray on behalf of others. These stones have seen many generations come and go.
On the southern side of the wall are excavations some 50 or more feet below the current level. This first-century street may have felt the footsteps of the Lord. Nevertheless, this street did feel the destruction of the city and temple foretold by the Lord, for the stones still lay where they were thrown down 2,000 years ago.
Outside the southern wall are ancient entranceways now blocked off. Below these are found towers, walls, and artifacts reaching back to the time of King Solomon, some 3,000 years ago.
On the northern side of the western wall is the quarter-mile temple tunnel excavations. This is a demonstration of how the original mountaintop was covered by the temple platform. Then, with the ancient Jewish temple in place and the current Dome of the Rock, some of the giant foundation stones defy explanation. This one being 35 feet long and weighing about 500 tons. This is the closest place in the tunnel to where the Ark of the Covenant sat in the temple. Some Jewish women often come here to pray. The tunnel exits into the Muslim quarter.
An absolutely necessary destination is the Temple Mount, which is still controlled by the Muslims. Jews and Christians are not allowed to pray here, but the Muslims perform their rituals and religious studies all over the platform. The Dome of the Rock is quite an impressive building. which supposedly covers the rock where Abraham almost sacrificed Isaac, and where the ark sat inside the Jewish temple. To the north is a small stone canopy which also commemorates that special place, called the Dome of the Tablets and the Spirit. There is even a school for Muslim children on the Temple Mount. From the back side of the eastern gate, there is quite a view of the Kidron Valley and the majestic Mount of Olives.
What an amazing adventure to wander around and through the wonderful old city of Jerusalem. Yes, we did venture into the modern city, like here on Ben Yehudah Street, to sightsee and enjoy. But really nothing compares to the history and atmosphere of ancient Jerusalem.